Welcome, Bronco Nation, my game preview for Boise State versus Fresno State, and welcome into the Horseshoe Spirit Studios. Make sure you grab yourself a bottle of Horseshoe Spirits liquor wherever Horseshoe Spirits liquor is sold, which should be in any liquor store in the southwest of Idaho. You can also grab yourself a bottle at www.horseshoespirits.com for those of us who are not lucky enough to live in the great state of Idaho. Make sure you grab yourself a bottle and multiple bottles from the online website. The more bottles you buy, in this sense, the cheaper it is, because if you get 6 bottles, it's actually shipping is free. And if you buy 3 bottles or more, then it's going to be 50% off. So a great deal. Make sure you find yourself liquor that you love at horseshoespirits.com. I'll make sure I put a link to that in the description of this video. And then, of course, if you live in Boise, then you can just grab one. And then if they don't have one in stock, they don't have any Horseshoe Spirits liquor in stock at your local liquor store, make sure you ask for it by name and they will get it in for you. Well, Boise State, 6-2, takes on the 5-3 Fresno State Bulldogs in what is known as the Battle of the Milk Can. Is the only rivalry that Boise State has that actually has a named trophy associated with it, and it's a rivalry that's going to survive and continue as Boise State and Fresno State both moving up into the Pac-12. It's a bit of a storied rivalry as well, especially recent history. This has been going on for quite some time. This is the 27th matchup between Boise State and Fresno State. Very few schools can claim that type of numerous matchups versus Boise State Broncos, and unlike a lot of those other series that Boise State has with other teams, Fresno State and Boise State have actually been very close in this series, again, especially recently. So we're going to talk through all of that in this matchup. We're going to preview the series history. We're going to look at the key players for both Boise State and for Fresno State, and we'll look at the keys to the game for Boise State. So hey, if there's Fresno State fans watching, there is stuff in this video for you as well. I'm also going to be doing a live show with some Fresno State fans on their channel I think we're going to do that on Thursday. So make sure you keep an eye out for that on my socials and make sure that I promote and push that out as well. But there's going to be stuff here for Fresno State fans, so leave your comments as well. Be part of the score prediction challenge we'll talk about here in a moment. I love bringing in other fans, being able to have that conversation with all of you as well, and being part of that discussion down below. And then, of course, I'll end with my summary and score prediction, which brings me to my favorite part of every one of my videos, the score prediction challenge. Of course, you are competing to win this Ashton Jeanty jersey. The closest score prediction will win will be entered into a raffle at the end of the year. For whoever ends up winning that will win the jersey. And you don't have to have the perfect score prediction. Closest one wins. Now, if there's multiple people that get the exact score prediction right, multiple people will win. It's only when nobody gets it exactly right, then it just goes to the closest score prediction. Last week, and I do apologize, I forgot to shout this out. I mean to do that in all of my game reviews. Last week, I was quite upset after the game versus Nevada, and I forgot to do that. So, shout out to Tyler Mason Heimer 799. His score prediction of 28-10. Almost nailed it. I mean, a few points off, 4 points off or so off the Boise State score, and then only about 7 points then off of the Fresno State score there. So very, very close. Almost nailed the actual exact score. So fantastic job, Tyler. And it actually brings me to something I do want to say before we get into the rest of the video here, talking about being upset versus Nevada. I stand by all of my points that I made in my video. All my points were based, when written, were based on facts and logic, and I would back them up. And if you disagree with those points, I 100% appreciate that. I would love to have that discussion with you in the comments below, which is, again, the favorite part of all these videos, getting to have a discussion with Boise State fans. However, while I stand by the points that I made, I was very upset after the game versus Nevada. And I pride myself on my channel for allowing ration and reason and logic to reign supreme. Obviously, I'm a huge fan of Boise State, but I want my analyst side to take precedence on the channel. The fan side incorporates as well, but I want to be an analyst first, and I want to be logical and rational, and to do that, I need to be unemotional. So again, while I stand by all my points, the delivery of those points was certainly tinged with a lot of emotion, and I do apologize for my tone and the harshness with which I delivered some of the points last week. Again, I don't back down in any of the points that I made. I do believe Boise State overlooked that game. I believe that you look at statistically, they didn't deserve to win that matchup, and they ended up getting lucky then that they did. And I think that all of that was within Boise State's control, and they allowed it to happen. And so all the points I made, I stand by. But the manner in which I delivered them. I want to always be able to speak in a way that if I had the player or the coach or the parent, which I know a lot of parents watch these videos, or the parent standing in front of me, I could say those things to their face about their child or about themselves or about, if you coach, about the players that they coach, and have a conversation. And that was not the temperament that I was in when I made my video last week. So I'm not going to allow any negative criticism or feedback from the points made to deter me from speaking what I believe to be the truth, no matter who it is who is out there saying or giving pushback on this. Again, if you have pushback to me or you have a different opinion from me, I welcome that. I want to have a discussion, an argument. My mind can always be changed, and nothing I say here do I think that I own the sole authority on truth and the nature of thus. So I want to have the conversation with each and every one of you. I think that every single person in Bronco Nation has the capability to find the actual truth that is out there when it comes to Boise State, and I am certainly capable of being off in my assessments. And so I want to have that debate and that discussion. If you disagree, if you agree, that's awesome, but I also want to find those that disagree. That's why I like to bring in opposing viewpoints when trying to welcome in other fans on this channel as well, because I want to have that disagreement and that conversation in a civil way, which I think is the base root of society. And again, one last thing here before, and we'll put all this behind us and just look ahead at Fresno State. One more thing I do want to address is this concept when you're talking about the base roots of civilization, is this idea that you can't criticize that which you support, that you can't disagree with those who may be in authority over that which you support and that which you love. And I absolutely, fundamentally, not just as a Boise State fan, but as an American, disagree with that concept. I think the very, very foundation of a free society is the idea that accountability is important. And on top of that, I don't think you can have love or respect or support if you're not willing to hold that which you love or respect or support accountable. I think accountability is the foundation block to any form of relationship, and being a fan is the relationship between you and the team. I think that that is the foundational block. If you are not willing to hold that which you love accountable, you don't really love it. If you don't truly feel that you can speak up and say when you see something wrong and you're not willing to do that, you don't have the passion to truly say that you love that thing. That is the foundation of any form of support or respect. You cannot truly support something if you are not willing to also criticize and hold accountable. Now, there's obviously a way to go about it, and I'll admit last week I didn't go about it the way I emotionally delivered some of my points. But if you are not willing to hold something accountable, you don't truly support that thing. And I think there's an impression, and you may have heard it on some other Boise State talk shows, that there is this idea that you can't support something, and how if you criticize or if you confront the leader of your school, then how can you really call yourself a fan? That is not just wrong, it's also dangerous. It's dangerous towards the future of Boise State, because Boise State only gets the highest level when all people involved hold it to the highest standard, when accountability flows from the top all the way through the fan base. But it's also dangerous to the concept of being an American in general, because that is the foundation of our civilization in which we stand, is that we are going to hold all things that we support and love accountable to their actions ultimately at the end of the day. So that's off my soapbox. We're done. I'm not going to mention this again. I am moving ahead, looking ahead to Fresno State, and I don't want to have to think about what happened. I don't have to think about Nevada ever again, or think about what happened after that. I do love and respect this school, its institution, and its leadership. I'm incredibly excited by the future of Boise State and those who we have in charge leading this institution. We could not ask for better coaches or better athletic director staff either. This is the perfect body to push Boise State into the next level and the future, getting us back to that golden era. I'm incredibly behind everything right now that Boise State is putting out and pushing forward towards doing, and I'm incredibly excited about that. Now, I won't say I'm behind everything, because again, I have disagreements, but I support the focus and goals and drives, and especially the intent of this institution. And I can't wait to see where all this goes going forward. But I am always on this channel, always going to be 100% honest and open. I'm going to praise when it is appropriate. I'm going to criticize when it is appropriate and try to be 100% balanced across the board. I may miss the mark, and that's why I want you to hold me accountable in the comments below on all of my videos. And that's not just to build up engagement. I truly do want to have this conversation with each and every one of you. But at the same time, that is my intent and my focus, and it's never going to change on this channel. So, enough of that. We're already 9 minutes in. We haven't started talking about the matchup. Hopefully, there's still some of you that haven't fallen asleep or still sticking around watching the video. Let's push forward with looking at Boise State versus Fresno State. A great series history between both of these teams, 17-9 overall. I talked about this being a closer series. Now, that may not seem huge. I mean, Boise State's blowing them out. Well, especially when you look at schools that Boise State plays on a regular basis, you don't see a lot of these types of numbers, those 17-9, where, Fresno State has won close to, half of, not half, but, 17 wins for Boise State and 9 wins for Fresno State. So Boise State's only got about double the wins of Fresno State, one short of that. If they can win on Saturday, then they'll have double the wins versus Fresno State. But that is not the margin of victory that Boise State usually has over these opponents. And much recently, that has not been the case at all. Boise State owns a bare edge against Fresno State right now. Since 2013, they've played 11 times. Boise State has won 6 of those. And okay, so Fresno State's won 5, Boise State's won 6. If Fresno State was to win on Saturday, they would have won 6 of the last 12 matchups and basically tied up the series in recent history for the Boise State Broncos. And this is a series, like I said, I've been around for a long time. First 3 games starting in 1977 and concluding in 1996, Fresno State won all of them, and by huge margins. It wasn't even close. I mean, we're talking 7-42 type games, 7-41. The closest was 21-37. And then in 2001, and this is really what made this a rivalry. Okay, even though it was Boise State's first win in the series, it kind of kicked it off from the beginning. We were basically, how I talked about Nevada, we were their Nevada, okay? Fresno State was a top 20 program. They had Carr, the older, not the younger Carr, the senior Carr, at the helm, and they were putting themselves in position to go and do what Boise State would do later on in 2006 and what Utah would do just prior to that. And Boise State beat Fresno State at Fresno 35-30 with a young Dinwiddie going up against Carr, and Boise State won. That is what started all of this. That was the beginning, the foundational block of this rivalry game. Now, it wasn't exactly close, but that's where Boise State built up most of this huge margin, 17-9, between 2001 and 2012. Boise State won 11 out of those 12 games. Now, some of them were very close. They're very good games. There's a lot of blowouts in there, especially during the Kellen Moore era. But during that time, they only won the one game in 2005. Other than that, Boise State, and that was a bad year for Boise State, and, lost their head coach after that, and Chris Peterson comes in 2006. Other than that, though, Boise State owned the series. But again, between 2013 and 2023, which was the last time Boise State played Fresno, they won only 6 out of the 11 games, which included 4 Mountain West titles that they split straight down the middle, 2-2. And so the last game that Boise State played was actually in 2023, and it basically got Andy Avalos fired. So I guess when you're talking about the future direction of the program and bringing Spencer Danielson, who has got this program headed back in the right direction, I guess we do have Fresno State to thank for that. But Fresno State won that game 30-37, which was the last time that these two teams played, and Fresno State is right now on a 2-game win streak. So Boise State, they want to reestablish themselves in this rivalry. It's been too long. It's been several years since Boise State beat the Fresno State Bulldogs, and it's an opportunity for Boise State to build themselves up going into the Pac-12, a team that they're going to be facing on a regular basis. Pretty much all the teams they face the rest of the way out here, these are Pac-12 opponents that they will be facing on a regular routine basis. Every single team, I'd have to double check the calendar, but every other team they play should be a Pac-12 team that they end up facing in 2026. And this, when you start talking about establishing yourself in a new conference, just like Boise State did back in 2001, it starts tonight, reestablishing this rivalry, first Fresno State, and bringing the milk can home, which I saw a picture of it, by the way. It doesn't look like Fresno State has been treating that thing with the respect and care that it deserves. And so it deserves to come home. And in order to do that, Boise State's key players are going to be, starting off, defensive back Jeremiah Irby. He has done an incredible job this year. Last season, all of last season, 2024, he had 34 tackles, 6 passes defended, and an interception. We are halfway through. So we're just over halfway through, 6-2, right? So 8 games in. He has already eclipsed his 2024 numbers. He played the entire season 2024. He has already, in just 8 games, eclipsed his 2024 numbers. He has 38 tackles, 5 passes defended, so just one short is 2024, and 2 interceptions, including last week, one of the most incredible interceptions that I have seen in a very long time. I mean, there have been some amazing interceptions for Boise State back in the day, but this was right up there with them. It was an incredible play on the ball. And when you talk about a Boise State secondary that has done an amazing job, just an amazing job transforming themselves from a team that was, not team, but a unit that was one of the things holding Boise State back at the beginning of the season to one of the things that is the main reason they are winning games. 3 interceptions last week. Now, yeah, a lot of that had to do with the true freshman quarterback making bad decisions, but Boise State secondary put themselves in a position to benefit from those mistakes, and especially that interception, the second interception for Boise State there with Irby, was a brilliant, incredible INT that was just all effort. It wasn't a terrible throw, but he absolutely bodied out the receiver and went and made a wide receiver-esque catch to grab that ball. Again, Boise State secondary, Tamari Warren fighting for his job, seems to have secured it. All of that is because of these players stepping up under the leadership of Tamari Warren, and a big part of that has been Jeremiah Irby. Incredible job coming down the season. When you're talking about a Fresno State team that is going into a new quarterback, so they started a new quarterback versus San Diego State. This will be his second game. He has already thrown 2 interceptions. This could be a very, very key matchup for Boise State in secondary. Obviously, we still have Marion McCoy as well, and Benefield and all of these players that have been playing really, really well stepping up for Boise State secondary. But I think that Irby is also going to be one of those guys that maybe rides on that momentum and takes advantage of some potentially poor mistakes here by a junior quarterback. He's a sophomore overall, but he's been playing in the FCS before. His junior quarterback coming in, fresh face, not having a lot of experience in the FBS level, and coming up against Boise State secondary that is playing at elite level with Irby right there at the head right now. And I hope he carries out the hammer because he 100% deserves it. Second overall for the key players is going to be wide receiver Cam Bates. Now, that might be a little bit of a surprising guy to throw out there because he hasn't had necessarily like a huge season overall. 8 catches, 146 yards, 4 rushes for 72 yards and 2 touchdowns. Been very involved in the jet sweeps. However, 4 of his 8 catches have come in the last 2 games. And right now, you're looking at a Boise State team that's going to be without 2 of their top 3 receivers coming up against Fresno State. Almost half of their passing yards between those 2 guys that are going to be out. One due to injury and Ford, and one due to suspension and Marshall. When you're looking at an explosive threat, I know you still have Penry's done a great job stepping up for Ford. Capel's obviously senior leading this team. Louder the tight end. You still have some other weapons, but when you talk about an explosive threat, over the top, one of those guys you're going to look to is Cam Bates. I think he probably has, besides maybe Quentin Brown on this team, who's only had the one really big catch. He's had 2, but that one really big catch for touchdown. A proven weapon who has an explosive potential. Probably nobody has a higher upside right now that's going to be on the field other than Cam Bates. His last 2 games, he's had catches of 26 and 37 yards. And honestly, both of those throws underthrown. If they were put a little bit more ahead of him, he could have had completions of 60, 70 yards and touchdowns on both of those as well. So I think that this is a player that has a chance to step up in a big way. In a Boise State wide receiver core that is reeling a little bit, this could be an opportunity for Max Madsen to find an explosive threat deep. And then the last player that we're going to look at here is Dylan Riley. Boise State, not very successful running the ball. They very much tried to last week, but not very successful doing it. I think part of that is Dylan Riley had 200 yards the week before versus UNLV. That is a lot of running and carries. I know he wasn't touched very much because UNLV's defense is terrible, but despite all of that, that is a lot of touches and a lot of yards to run through as a running back here. And I think that I don't think he was injured per se, but I definitely don't think that they leaned on him. I think he felt it. I mean, this is a young player. He's a sophomore coming in, true sophomore for Boise State that has exploded this season. But this isn't like an Ashton Genty he has been preparing his whole time at Boise State to do what he did last year. Okay, this is a player who has a lot of high upside and potential to go out and be a great running back, one of the great running backs for Boise State. Certainly has that potential to do that, but he's a young running back who hasn't built up that stamina and physical. I mean, the mind is willing, but the body can only do so much, and he is an incredible athlete, but he's also a young athlete. And so that kind of level of reps, I think it takes a toll. And so while Boise State, maybe he wasn't injured, I think they definitely limited his play. Most of his carries last week, he only had 12 touches, and honestly, a lot of those, about a third at least, came on the last drive, including most of his yards, came on the last drive of the game for Boise State when they really needed it to shut out Nevada and come away with the win. It was kind of like an Ashton Genty-esque moment versus Wyoming, the Boise State struggling the whole game, and they bring out Ashton Genty for that last drive. He fights with injuries, and he goes out and he grinds it out, and Boise State's able to come away with a win. not exactly the same. I don't think that Dylan Riley's injured to that level or injured at all, potentially. But I do think that it was saving him until they needed him. When they did, he did what he needed to do to put Nevada out of the game and win that one for Boise State. Well, I think now he's come off of a week where he wasn't super utilized, has an opportunity to be a little fresher, and I think not desperate, but willing, highly motivated is the word I was trying to go there, highly motivated to prove himself once again on the blue, and I think that the fan base here, they energize these players on the field, especially guys with such huge upsides, explosive, top-end potential like Dylan Riley. They feed off of that crowd momentum and energy. I think we see a big game from Dylan Riley. Overall, again, this year, he's had 98 touches for 729 yards, 7.4-yard average, was over 8 before Nevada. 7 touchdowns, 9 receptions, 130 yards, and a touchdown. I think that he adds to all of those numbers this week versus Fresno State. Now, on the other side of things, Fresno State gets a vote, and their players, while they may not be tested at the quarterback position, they do have some really, really strong running backs and a great defensive player, which we're all going to talk about here in a moment. But let's start off just addressing the quarterback situation. So they've had a different quarterback for most of the season who has thrown a lot of interceptions. And so they've made a change at that position. They've brought in Carson Conklin. I really am not trying to mess up that name, so if I did mess it up, please correct me in the comment section below. Fresno State fans may not be familiar with my channel, but I suck at name pronunciation. It's a definite weakness of mine, so please correct me in the comments below if I did mess up that name. I did watch the game versus San Diego State, but unfortunately, I had my kids with me, and I had it on mute. I did not have the volume on during the game. But Carson, anyway, he's a JUCO transfer from Sac State. Had a lot of yards there. His last season, he had almost 3,000 yards passing. So this is a kid that definitely has an arm and definitely knows how to throw it around at a collegiate level. But it's different going FCS to FBS. It really is. I mean, I've talked to players on my channel that they talk about that FCS to FBS jump. It's not automatic. It really isn't. There is a step up. And while he has played really well at the JUCO level, you could see versus San Diego State that he was struggling to adjust. It was his second game of the season, but his first game was versus an FCS team. So second game, first game versus an FBS opponent, there was definitely some adjustments, concerns. Only completed 47.6%. Now again, San Diego State, they're a good defense, certainly, very good defense. But that's also, I think, you're looking at a guy who is technically a junior, really technically a sophomore based on playing time available, but junior based on experience. But in this environment, he's basically a freshman, okay? He's going from a JUCO level to FBS, and it is a big jump up, and it showed last week. 20 of 42, 47.6 completion percentage, 0 touchdowns, less than 200 yards passing, and 2 interceptions. He is definitely going to want to find a way to step up and prove himself on the blue. Intimidating environment for sure, but potentially with a little bit of experience in an FBS program, so a little bit of gelling with his wide receivers. It started to happen a little bit in that game. Maybe he can bring that into Boise State, but it's certainly going to be a challenge and one that Boise State will be looking to exploit. However, Fresno State's lucky because they're not reliant entirely on the quarterback position. Now, it is the predominant number of their yardage does come from the quarterback position. They average just over 200 yards passing and just over 100 yards rushing. So they're a balanced team, but they're not necessarily a run-heavy one. However, they may be a little bit more run-heavy with the fact that their running back core is probably their most reliable weapon right now, especially with a young quarterback trying to figure himself out and this team on the blue. And they have 2 very, very good running backs, Bryson Donaldson and Rashawn Luke. 92 carries for 428 yards for Bryson, 4.7-yard average, and 3 touchdowns. And Rashawn, a little bit more of an explosive threat, 64 carries for 407 yards and a 6.4-yard average and 5 touchdowns. I think you'll see both of these guys. They typically run them both, kind of a little change of pace throughout the game. And so those are definitely an explosive threat. Boise State defense that has done pretty well against the running game overall, but with a Fresno State team that is potentially looking to shift focus away from their quarterback, establishing the run is going to be key for these 2 running backs out of Fresno. And now, when Boise State tries to establish run on their side, they're going to have to come up against linebacker Jaden Person. He is the ultimate journeyman, the kind of prototypical new NIL type recruit, the NIL era, going from school to school to school. He started off at Air Force, then he went to Utah, then he went to Utah State, and now he's finally found himself at Fresno, and he's found a home because he is thriving here. 65 tackles. Now, none of them are like huge tackles for loss. He's had a couple of those, but it's not his strong point. He's won about the last 3 games without any tackles for loss. No sacks at all, no INTs, 1 pass defended. So he's not necessarily a big play type guy, but when you talk about a reliable player, somebody who's going to get all over the field and make the tackle when you need them to, This is one of those guys, 65 tackles. He's 6th overall in the country. So as soon as Boise State gets past that first line of defense, this is a guy that any of their running backs are going to have to worry about. He's a reliable tackler, and he is the leader on this Fresno State defense. Now, for keys to the game for Boise State, the key number one for them, mentioned it a little bit already with the Nevada game. Don't do that versus Fresno State. Do not overlook. I don't believe that Nevada lined up versus Boise State with Boise State giving their absolute best performance and Nevada beat them. I don't think that's what happened. I think that Boise State looked at Nevada and decided they could overlook them because of their record or whatever reasons and look ahead to Fresno State. Now, you might say that's not going to happen versus Fresno State. There's no way. They're too big of an opponent. They're a storied rival. We have a trophy. But Nevada's a rival too, okay? Maybe not to the same named level, but they're certainly more bitter. I mean, I know some people hate Fresno State more. It kind of depends on what era you grew up in and which team you hate more and which was the most devastating loss for you. And so there's certainly some give and take there. But it is arguable that Nevada is a more bitter rival than Fresno State, and they did overlook them. So the rivalry nature doesn't allow for the fact that an overlook can't happen. Now you're saying Nevada's not Fresno, or Fresno State's not Nevada. There's no way that they overlooked them. Well, Nevada had a new quarterback, all right? Fresno State has a new quarterback. Nevada's record is 1-5. Fresno State's record is 5-3, but they've lost their last 2 games, including a blowout loss versus Colorado State, who fired their head coach about a week later. And that's kind of the position that Colorado State team was in, and they demolished Fresno State 21-49. So there is a chance that somebody looking at this game could say that Fresno State's maybe a little bit more of a Trojan horse, a little bit of a paper tiger, not as dangerous as they looked earlier on in the season, especially coming off a game where they scored 0 points versus San Diego State. And also, while Nevada was overlooking for Fresno State, that San Diego State game next week just became the most important game on the entire schedule, and probably if Boise State can, regardless of who wins that game, likely a game that you'll see as a rematch later on in the Mountain West Championship. And so that is certainly it has to, at a very base level, even if you don't overlook this team and you focus on them, there is some drawing a focus to that game and how big of a matchup it is, especially a team that just dismantled Fresno State last week. And so the potential exists. It certainly exists out there. It is not outside the realm of possibility that it could happen. And so key number one, whether it's obvious or not, whether it shouldn't have to be stated, but it does, key number one is do not overlook this Fresno State team. Hold no cards back. Do not just play to win, play to dominate. It doesn't matter at the end of the day whether you do dominate or not. As long as you win, and I know that was part of the discussion, a win's a win. To a certain extent, that is true. As long as you win, that is what's most important. But in that moment of getting to the win, you need to know that that win is repeatable, that you had control in that process, that you did something intentionally in that game to cause the result. Because otherwise, you create an atmosphere where you don't know what the next result is going to be. And that's always the case. Obviously, there's always a chance that anybody can beat anyone. But if you are in a situation where you're not controlling the outcome and you're putting that into other teams' hands, that is a moment where you're going to get into some games where other teams are going to have that vote, and their vote is going to be stronger than yours, and they're going to beat you. And so games like Fresno State, matchups, rivalries, games, and I know it's on the blue, and Boise State's not going to overlook. I know that, and I don't think this is going to happen, but you cannot just play to win. You have to come ready to play to dominate. If you win close, that's fine, but as long as you are playing to dominate, which by that I mean not holding anything back, being creative in your play calling, being explosive, playing every single down to the whistle, piling on the ball, holding on to the plays, getting those tackles, all of that, playing focused and intense in that level, in a mannerism that gives you the opportunity to dominate. Whether you do or not doesn't matter, but Boise State needs to play in a way that puts them in a position to control the outcome of this game from beginning to end, or Fresno State will take advantage, and they have before. Not a lot of teams know how to win on the blue. Fresno State does. Now, it's not the same head coaching staff, and it's not the same players, but they have won on the blue, and they're not necessarily super scared of it like other programs are. You cannot in any way overlook this Fresno State team, and I don't expect that Boise State do. I expect to be able to give that a solid A+, because I think that whatever happened last week is not happening the rest of the season, and I cannot wait to see Boise State come out and have a great showing versus Fresno State with fulfilling key number one of don't overlook. Now, key number two for Boise State, a little bit more nuts and bolts here, is find the pass. Now, I'm not saying that you come out and just go away from the running game. No, Boise State needs to establish the run in this game. They absolutely do. It would be ludicrous to go away from two of your greatest playmakers in Dylan Riley and Sire Gaines on this offense. And an offensive line that, yeah, they struggled versus Nevada, but they've shown consistent improvement throughout the season. Only 2 penalties last week. That's really not getting any attention at all. I apologize if my comments detracted from that, and maybe they would have gotten more praise if that didn't become the main talking point over the week. But only 2 penalties. They had 2 penalties last week in the first half for 10 yards, and then no penalties in the second half. That is huge for a Boise State offense that has struggled so much to be to just be consistent on the blocking schemes, but also in the penalties. That has been a major factor. That's been something that's really held Boise State up more than anything, is their inability to be disciplined and to prevent those penalties. And they did that last week. And so while maybe they didn't create the biggest holes, they also didn't hurt themselves as like they have in other games as well. So there is a good trend here. So you need to keep running. You need to keep feeding your dynamic, explosive players in Sire Gaines and Dylan Riley. However, at the same time, this is a Fresno State defense that is going to be ready to stop that run. There's a couple of things out there. Max Madsen is struggling right now. He just come off of one of his worst performances of his career. I thought it was his worst game of his career, even if not statistically, just what happened on that field. 54% completion versus Nevada, should have been 46%. 2 incredible catches, not great thrown ball, and poorly thrown balls that the wide receivers made great plays on. Otherwise, it really should have been 46%. But even if you count those in, 15-28, 54% completion percentage. There are some hints that he is playing injured, which is, I think, quite explainable when you look at the style and how he's playing. It doesn't look like the Max Madsen from last season or even from earlier in the year once he got his confidence under him. That hit versus Air Force has certainly got to be a factor for him in these games. And so, Fresno State knows that. They know that he's hampered. They know that Boise State just ran the ball 47 times. Despite whether or not it worked, only 2.9 yards a carry, they still did that versus Nevada. You don't do that unless you're trying to establish something as a program. They know Boise State wants to run. They also know that Max Madsen is struggling, and they know that Boise State's without 2 of their top targets in the passing game. If I was a defensive coordinator, I would look to shut down the running game and force Boise State to beat you in the passing game. And while Boise State cannot go away from the running game, and I hope that the running game is a huge game versus Fresno State, that's exactly what you have to do, is find a way to beat Fresno State through the air, because that might be what this game falls down to. And so for Boise State versus Fresno State, they need to find a way to establish the short, quick passing game. Pretty much every single, it's because of the focus on play action, but pretty much every single pass for Boise State is this delayed pass, where it's the pass, play action, roll out, look upfield, make the throw. Sometimes that works, okay? And you need to keep doing that. I like that play call. It works a lot. But you need to have some other weapons in your arsenal, including the deep pass, which Boise State, to their credit, has started to emphasize. Like I said, Bates with 2 deep catches the last couple of games. But in addition to that, not just the play action, not just the deep pass, you need to get some short passing game. And I don't just mean screens to the tight end, because at this point, the defenses seem to have figured that out. You need to go away from that for a little bit before you can come back. Boise State just needs to figure out a way to establish a short, quick passing game. Quick outs to the wide receivers, some throws to the flats. That last drive that we saw for Boise State versus Nevada, they actually did that. And a couple of quick passes, a quick slant to Penry that ended up putting them just short of a first down. They did a quick out to Caples, who ran it up for 8 or 10 yards to get another first down. And that opened up some opportunities. The running game suddenly started being more explosive because the defense couldn't just focus crowding in to stop the run. And they had to spread out a little bit because they knew that short, quick passing game was a weapon. To Boise State's credit, they have started using the slant. They actually use it over and over again, maybe too much versus Nevada. They need to diversify a little bit. Some tight end outs. They need to run some, again, those plays to the flats, maybe some running backs to the flat, not just screens, but some running backs to the flats. Quick, short passing game. That is what Boise State needs versus Fresno State. And I think that is a way that you can, establish some confidence with Max Madsen and his wide receiver core, but also find some ways to start to establish some reps here. Just get some easy throws out there, not just establish that confidence for Max Madsen, but also for the wide receivers. Find a way for them, who are, again, going to be somewhat young and untested. Caples is a veteran there, and Penry has stepped up the last couple of games, has been around this program for a while, but You're going to have some very fresh faces, some guys that have maybe not caught a pass this season. I mean, some very young guys out there, and finding a way to get them the ball quickly and repetitively can help establish that confidence for them, and also that confidence between the quarterback, that chemistry between the quarterback and the wide receivers. And so find the passing game. Yes, you're going to need to rely on the run, but you are going to need to find ways in this one to beat Fresno State through the air, and you need to do that through a more creative passing game than honestly we have seen so far this season. So in that playbook, ruffle down to wherever it is that open up that dusty, uncracked level of the passing game and find some creative play calls here in the passing game that give your quarterback and wide receiver an opportunity to build some easy momentum in this matchup. And key number 3 is shut down the run. Now, Fresno State's going to be looking to shut down Boise State in the run. Boise State, they're going to do the same thing. This is a untested, for the most part, quarterback here that they have trotting out who is not a runner, okay? He hasn't had an opportunity to run very much this season, only a couple of games played, but in his FCS, so against FCS competition, in his FCS days, his last season, he ran the ball 37 times for negative 19 yards. Okay, true pocket quarterback. That is Boise State's bread and butter. They love those kinds of guys. Boise State's Achilles heel is the running quarterback, but the pocket passers, Boise State's defense starts licking their chops. They are great against putting pressure on the pocket passing quarterbacks, and the secondary finding ways to step up when they know that the running quarterback is not a threat, allows them to key in on their matchups much, much more effectively. Now, they've done a better job against running quarterbacks, but they do great against the pocket passing quarterback. And so for Boise State in this game, shut down the run. I think Fresno State probably knows the quarterback's their weakness. They're going to look to establish that. Boise State secondary has really stepped up. There have been some opportunities in the running game. Last week, Boise State really, really struggled with tackling versus Nevada, especially in the running game. I think Fresno State is going to key in on that and try to exploit it. Boise State's they had fixed it after USF. It came back versus Nevada. They have to find a way to focus in on that again and stop the run. Nevada, 213.8 yards passing, 148.8 yards rushing per game. Young quarterback, only his second game playing up against FBS, and a San Diego State team, that's how they beat Fresno State. San Diego State held Fresno State to 45 yards rushing, 2.0 average overall, and they won that game. That's how it happened, 23-0, because once the running game was shut down, the pass game, especially at this point with the chemistry just not there, was unable to compensate for it. Now, Boise State, if their running game gets shut down, I have more confidence that Maddox Madsen, especially with some of these explosive receivers, can find a way to win. We've seen him do it before. He has that potential. Fresno State, that is not a proven potential that they have at all. And if Boise State shuts down this running game, this will be a victory and potentially a big one against the Fresno State Bulldogs. So key number 1, don't overlook. Key number 2, find the pass. And key number 3, shut down the run. To summarize, Fresno State's unfamiliar with the blue. And I said that this is a team that knows how to win on the blue, and they do. But they haven't played in a very long time. They have not played on the blue in 3 years. And so there's a lot of players, a lot of staff, a head coach who do not know what it's like to play on the blue, and maybe are underestimating the level of difficulty that it is to come and play on the blue turf in front of all of these fans, which is going to include me. By the way, I'm coming up. I'm flying for this game. I can't wait. But it's not easy to win on the blue, and they don't have that regularity of having played there the last few years. They're finding themselves with a new quarterback. They obviously have a first-year head coach as well. That doesn't help as well. There's a lot going on. What's the future of this program? They just made a change at quarterback, midway, not even midway, 2/3 the way through the season. Where is this program putting itself right now? They've lost several Mountain West games, including back-to-back versus Fresno State and Colorado State. Mountain West title is a distant dream right now. They don't need a lot to happen. So there's a lot of uncertainty in this Fresno State program. Now, maybe beating Boise State, that's their Super Bowl, their chance to come away with something on this season. So that motivates them. But there's a lot of uncertain waters right now for where this Fresno State team is versus a Boise State team that has their goals clearly in sight, which is win the Mountain West Championship and potentially, with some chaos that is now going on around them, have a chance to be in the conversation for the playoffs. That is now back on the table. Now, I'm not saying they're going to get there. I don't even think they're a favorite to do that. I wouldn't put them as a favorite. But that they're now in the conversation again, which is amazing considering where Boise State started this season. But their number one goal of winning the Mountain West Championship is fully within, because they did win versus Nevada, is fully within their grasp. And they are a focused team versus a Fresno State team that's trying to find their way. At the same time, it's a Boise State team that's fired up, wanting to prove itself. Regardless of what the fans may think about them, that game was not up to their standards. And I know that the Boise State players and the coaches have hold themselves to a higher standard than any fan could ever expect out of them. And they certainly are going to be motivated to prove themselves that they can be better than what they showed versus Fresno State. So they're going to be fired up. The fan base, very fired up. Regardless of which side of the conversation you found, or debate that you found yourself on this last week, both of them showed a fan base that is motivated and excited for this team. On one hand, saying that they're proud of this program, that winning is important, and that they're excited about the future of this team. That's fantastic. Shows a fan base that is fired up and energized for this team. On the other hand, a fan base saying that this is not the standard that needs to be held to, that a win, yeah, while it's great, is not the only measuring mark of where a program should be, and Boise State should hold itself to a higher standard. That shows a fan base that, like I said, is holding their team accountable, which shows their passion, their love for the program. So right now, regardless of where you're at, the fact the conversation occurred shows a fan base that is energized and passionate and is ready to come out and support their team and be part of the process of getting a win for this Boise State team, and a big win on the blue versus Fresno State. So a team that's fired up and a fan base that's fired up. On top of that, Nate Potter, who is coming off with a fresh playbook because he held everything back versus Nevada. And so while that might have sucked last week, it is going to pay dividends this week versus Fresno State. So many reasons to expect a different performance. A defense is coming out on a high note. Boise State at home, though, is the biggest difference maker in all of that. It's tough to win on the road. I'll admit that. I know that. I mean, everybody knows it's tough to win on the road. But statistically, for Boise State this year, it really is hard to win on the road. Right now, they're 2 of 2 on the road. 2 wins, both of those they have been by 3 scores or less. They're only averaging right now 21.75 points, so 22 points per game on the road. On the blue, different story. 4 wins. They are averaging 48.75. Aside from the game versus New Mexico, every win has been by more than 3 scores. This is a team that dominates on the road, and it's because of you, Bronco Nation. It's because of these players being fired up and ready to go on the blue. This is a team and a fan base that's going to be ready to roar to a huge win and bring the milk can home. I cannot wait to be part of that loud, raucous crowd as Boise State wins versus Fresno State in my prediction. Score prediction, Boise State 38 versus Fresno State 24. Maybe lower than some people are expecting. Part of that is that Fresno State is very stingy when it comes to defense or allowing scores. Even when they've gotten beat, other than versus Colorado State, it hasn't been by a huge margin as far as total points scored. They're averaging only 23.6 points per game allowed. So there's a stingy defense, and a big part of that is going to be, I think, also a clock control type game. Boise State, I think they're going to come out very run heavy. I think Fresno State's going to do the same thing. I think both of these teams are going to wear down the clock, but I don't think it's going to necessarily be close in the end. I don't think they'll beat the spread, so about a 14-point margin, but I do think that Boise State comes out in an exciting manner, in a way that they are showing that they are ready to come out and win this game, and not just to sneak out with a win, but they are putting everything on this field, regardless of the final score margin. I'm expecting a much better performance overall for this team, and I can't wait to see it in person. So let me know your score predictions in the comments below, and let me know where you disagree with me, either in this context of the game itself or on past discussions. I would love to have that conversation with each and every one of you, but I more than that, I want to have a conversation about this game as well. So I am open to continuing to talk about some of these things and things that were said, but more than that, I want to talk about the Fresno State matchup. So please let me know all your thoughts, whatever they may be, in the comments below. I'm willing and able and wanting to have that conversation with every one of you, and especially please give me your score predictions and your thoughts on this matchup. And if you see me walking around, we're doing some tailgating, walking around before the game. If you see me before, I'll be wearing this shirt and this hat. Come by and say hi. Boise State or Fresno State fan, I'd love to be able to have that interaction with you. It's my one time a year that I get an opportunity to fly into my favorite place on earth. And my favorite part about it, just like my favorite part of all my videos, having the comments below, my favorite part about going to Boise is getting to interact with other Boise State fans. It feels, I'm just so used to being the only one, to being alone. And so it's like going to a family reunion and seeing some cousins that you didn't even know you had. I love having that opportunity. So please make sure that if you see me around, I would love to have a conversation with you. And if you don't get that opportunity, certainly in the comments below, I'll have that conversation with each and every one of you. So thank you so much for watching. Make sure you find yourself a bottle of Horseshoe Spirits liqueur. Must be 21 or older to consume. So thanks so much for watching. Make sure you subscribe. And as always, and I can't wait to say this in person, go Big Blue!